You've seen it 1,000 times in movies, right? Some detective is hunched over a screen, points at a super grainy image and says that famous line, "Enhance." And just like magic, a blurry blob turns into a crystal clear face. Well, today we're going to talk about why that's pure Hollywood fiction and how real security pros get the evidence they actually need. So let's just get right to it. Can you really do that? Can you take some useless, pixelated mess of a video and just create a suspect's face out of thin air? The short answer? Nope, not a chance. But the long answer? Well, that's where things get really interesting. It actually involves some surprisingly simple math that the pros use every single day. See, here's the basic problem. In the TV fantasy world, you have infinite zoom, perfect clarity. But back here in the real world, we're stuck with, physics. When you digitally zoom in, you're not adding new information. You're just stretching out the pixels you already have. It's like pulling on a digital photo. It just gets bigger and blurrier. You can't create detail that the camera never captured in the first place. Now, for years, this whole thing created a huge headache for the security industry. A client would ask a camera installer, "Hey, can I see a face with that camera?" And the installer would say, "Of course." But what seeing a face means to you might be totally different from what it means to me. It was this subjective, fuzzy mess that usually ended with a client being really disappointed. So to fix all this confusion, the industry came up with a pretty brilliant solution. It's called the DORI standard. DORI stands for Detection, Observation, Recognition, and Identification. It's this official international standard that takes that vague, subjective question and turns it into cold, hard, predictable math. So how does it work? Well, the DORI standard breaks down video quality into 4 really distinct measurable levels. And understanding these 4 levels, that is the absolute key to designing a security system that actually does what you want it to. Okay, so the 4 levels are detection, observation, recognition, and identification. Each one has a very specific goal, and they're all measured using this one simple metric called pixels per foot, or PPF. Just think of it as the density of detail. How many little digital squares of picture are focused on each foot of a real-world scene? Let's break down what each of these actually looks like. So first up is detection. This is the lowest level, at just 8 pixels per foot. Here, the only goal is to know if something is there. That's it. All you're going to see is a moving blob, but hey, you can at least tell it's a person and not a car. This is absolutely perfect for covering huge areas on the cheap, like a big parking lot or a long perimeter fence. All right, next we more than double that density to 19 ppf, and we get to observation. At this level, you can start to make out some general details. You still have no idea who the person is, but you could say something like, "Okay, I see a male wearing a red hoodie and blue jeans." This is great for just monitoring general activity, maybe in a lobby or a public hallway. Now we're getting somewhere. At 38 ppf, we hit recognition. And this is the level where you can reliably recognize someone you already know. You can look at the video with confidence and say, "Oh yeah, that's definitely Steve from accounting." This is pretty much the minimum standard you'd want for most indoor business security, like watching an employee entrance. And finally, we have the gold standard, identification. We're talking at dense 76 pixels per foot. At this level, the goal is to identify an unknown person, beyond a reasonable doubt. This is evidence. You can see forensic details like scars, tattoos, maybe even their eye color. This is what you need for places like bank teller windows, casino tables, or border control. Okay, so that all sounds good in theory, right? But how do you make sure you'll actually get the level of detail you need before you even buy or install a single camera? Well, you prove it on paper. And you do it with some really, really simple math. And here it is, the whole magic formula. It's just pixels per foot equals the horizontal resolution of your camera divided by the width of the scene you're trying to capture in feet. That's it. That one little calculation tells you everything you need to know. So let's just walk through a super common real-world example to see this in action. Let's say we need to put a single 1080p camera up to watch a gate that's 20 feet wide, and our goal is to get that top-tier forensic level identification. First thing we need is our camera's horizontal resolution. For any standard 1080p camera, that number across the screen is always 1920 pixels. Easy enough. Next up, we need the widths of our scene. So we go out there with a tape measure, and what do you know? The gate is exactly 20 feet wide. Now for the hard part. Just kidding, we just divide. 1920 pixels divided by 20 feet gives us a pixel density of 96 pixels per foot. So what does that number actually mean for us? Well, we take our result, 96 ppf, and we compare it to the DORI standard. The number we needed for identification was 76 ppf. Since our 96 is way higher than 76, we've just proven on paper, without spending a dime on gear, that this setup is going to work perfectly. It'll get us the forensic detail we need. Now you might be thinking, that sounds great, but trying to get that high level of detail everywhere would be insanely expensive, right? And you'd be correct. It would require a ton of cameras. That's exactly why smart professionals use a design strategy they call the choke point. The reality is, trying to get that 76 ppf, that identification level quality, across an entire warehouse or a giant parking lot, it's just not practical. The cost for the high-res cameras, not to mention all the data storage you'd need, would be astronomical. It's just massive overkill. So here's the smart play. The strategy is super simple. First, you use cheaper, wider-angle cameras to get that basic detection level coverage over the whole area. Then, step 2, you identify a choke point, a place that people have to pass through, like the main entrance or an exit gate. And for step 3, you aim one single high-quality camera right at that spot to get perfect identification. And the logic here is just perfect. A thief might be a blurry blob while he's wandering around the big open warehouse, and that's okay. But to get out, he has to walk through that one door. That's your choke point. That's where you set your trap, and that's where you get that crystal clear, evidence-grade face shot for the police. So there you have it. No more enhanced myths. You now know the actual science and the simple math that professionals use to design video security systems that, actually work. And it kind of leaves you with one last thought, right? Now that you know the secret, start looking around. Where are the choke points in your office, in your apartment building, or even in your neighborhood? I guarantee you'll start seeing security design in a completely new way.